formulating America's foreign policy, that paranoia has penetrated the inside of a Washington policymaker. So America now sees itself as a small, ineffective country surrounded by its perceived enemies. Where did they get that thought from? Not from the founding fathers. They got it from Israel.
Well, I think it's more than that. I mean, they want oil, they want weapons sales, they want to encircle China and Russia, and that's part of Zbigniew Brzezinski's grand strategy. But I agree there is a, the former head of Israeli Defense Forces said we must act like a mad dog so that the Arabs are scared of us. We've got to be extremely aggressive.
Well, then the $100 billion that the U.S. has given Israel illegally, because you can't give aid to a nuclear-armed country, that's completely illegal. How about give me back the $100 billion? Give America back the $100 billion, and you can be all the mad dog all day long. But, give me my money first that you owe me, which I figured out they owe me personally about $2,300 if I figure out my tax, for the last 25 years. Give me back my $2,500, and then you can be a mad dog all day. But don't be doing it in my name with my money. It's not in my interest. We've got nothing compatible. We don't have any interest together. So just be your mad dog self, but not with my money.
Well, I mean, Israel's got 400 high-tech nukes, high-tech cruise missiles, jets, bombers, tanks. I mean, Israel does not need our help. And if they want to start World War III, I mean, that's their business. But there is going to be blowback on this country, and we know the policy is this nation's going to be involved. And Israel knows that, and the larger interests, the big banks, the military-industrial complex, they want a new war as a political distraction, Max. And
what do you mean there will be blowback? What do you think 9/11 was all about? That is blowback.
Well, Max, you know that I on record, I mean, I believe 9/11 was completely staged.
Well, speaking about 9/11 for a second, and talking about the economics. David Callahan, who's the executive editor of a magazine called Smart CEO, he submitted a Freedom of Information Act, this is pretty recent now, to the SEC regarding pre-9/11 put options. I just picked this up off of Zero Hedge. The article is SEC, Government Destroyed Documents Regarding Pre-9/11 Put Options. And they came back and they told him that these documents were destroyed. Not that they lost them, or not that they needed to keep them, but that they were destroyed. So he's got an article coming out in the August edition of Executive Editor Smart CEO magazine about his Freedom of Information request from the SEC, and they come back to him and say, this information was destroyed. Now, concurrently, I've got a project on my film site, which is called 9/11 Jackpot, and it's being produced and directed by a friend of mine here in Paris, who is really digging in to this one piece of the story, the put options that were bought on United Airlines and American Airlines. Obviously, if you look at this closely with pre-knowledge of the event, to me, this has always been the smoking gun, and the 9/11 official report gives it very little attention. And this
it's one smoking gun of literally about 100, but it is one of the ones that's really bona fide. Record put options, not against airlines, but against American and United, specifically leading back, the German papers reported, to Buzzy Krongard, executive director of the CIA, who was also heading up a big brokerage firm at the time.
Yeah, Alex Brown and Son, which I was working at Alex Brown and Son, and I've met Buzzy Krongard. And
stop the presses. Let's rewind. Let's flesh that out. I didn't know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I worked at Alex Brown, and I've met Buzzy Krongard, and down in Baltimore, where Alex Brown had their headquarters. He then took a job over with George Tenet at the CIA as a deputy director over at their CIA. And the amount of information that flows between the CIA and a Baltimore-based brokerage firm down there in Maryland is enormous. And there's a tremendous amount of chatter between George Tenet and the brokers of Alex Brown, where these trades were originated. The fact that the stock market was closed for several days after the attacks, they didn't anticipate this, which is why you had over $2 million profits were uncollected on these put options, because they weren't able to close them out on the same day and journal that money somewhere where it couldn't be found, because the markets were closed, because they closed the stock exchange. But so Buzzy was at Alex Brown, and I know plenty of people at Alex Brown. And also, I also have another interesting tie to this because my company, the Hollywood Stock Exchange, was bought by Cantor Fitzgerald and moved to the top floor of the World Trade Towers just 3 months before the attacks. So I had people who I knew from HSX who were in the towers, and I also knew people at Alex Brown. So I was privy to a lot of chatter. And part of what I've been helping this guy explore in his film 9/11 Jackpot is to really dig down and invest and look at these puts and to look at what I call the mystery of broker zero. And this is the mystery of what I have a very strong feeling that I'm going to explore in this film about a broker that was actually speculating on their own demise, basically buying these puts on these airline stocks unknowing that they were actually speculating on their own demise. I think this is a fantastic story because it epitomizes the entire American business model today. Suicide bankers, banking jihadis, destroying the economy for a quick buck, for a failed ideology, and they're just throwing the entire economy under the bus.
Well said, Max Keiser. Now, I want to go to telephone calls for you on a host of issues. But first, I had read the cybersecurity bill. It was all over the news. Headline, Obama to have kill switch. And Lieberman came out on CNN yesterday. We're going to play that clip coming up early in the next hour. The video, folks want to watch it in its entirety, is in the article, Lieberman, China can shut down the Internet. Why can't we? And that's a quote in there. He said, well, China can shut down the Internet. Why can't we? It's for our own security. The Financial Times of London, FCC and Move to Regulate Internet, says that they're going to have a box at all the ISPs, but also in your home, that your TV and your Internet is wired through. They will both surveil what you're watching and doing. This is all openly, hidden in plain view. In a 3-2 vote along party lines, it passed. And that the box will also block what you're allowed to see, and that they're going to, quote, tax the alternative media for a, quote, government megaphone to fund new government propaganda that will be bought and purchased on mainstream television. So the government taking over the mainstream dominant media, shutting down the alternative media and taxing what's left. I mean, I can't even believe how bold this is. This is light years ahead of what communist China does. They just have ISP firewalls and keyword and web address blockers. This is going to have that with the NSA controlling all ISPs. And that's only part of it, but then also a black box in your house or business with everything wired through it. I mean, Max Keiser, this is... I can't even believe I'm actually seeing them do this. I mean, this is shocking me.
Okay, well, clearly the ability to survey at this level is coming online because the technology associated with it is following what's called the asymptotic curve, which is the curve toward zero cost. All of the technology involved is getting cheaper every single month for storage, processing, and broadband. Now, the question is, everyone's going to be surveyed, and everyone is going to have their life completely known by the feds. So how are you going to incentivize these people to actually do some work when they've basically their lives have been shattered? And this is where I think you're going to find a trend toward more and more legalized gambling. And in the States this past week, now they're talking about legalizing online gambling in a big, big way. So you've got, this is, as you can tell, I'm leading up to my theme here of a casino gulag. So you've got people who are stuck in their homes in front of their computers being watched 24/7, but tolerated because they're able to gamble freely on the Internet in the hopes that someday they'll hit the lucky number and they'll escape prison. And millions of people will... Oh,
that's right. You said here 2 years ago that we were going to have debtor prisons again when we first started interviewing you. And now the headlines are all over the U.S. news. In prison for debt. $300, 2 months in jail, $365 or $366. In fact, pull up the actual headline. Woman loses home for $360-something was the headline over unpaid